Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We're starting off taking a look at the recent activities concerning the pipelines, the Avengers, the militants. But Dr. Bibobra Orubebe joins us this morning. He's the General Secretary of Niger National Congress, also a legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Well, this is a challenge that the country wants to rid itself of. At the time when we heard the story that conversation was going on between the federal government and militants, including Avengers, many have thought that at least that will help them shift their swords and then until they come to a conclusion. But again, we're faced with this challenge. What do you think is going on?
Well, for a start, I think the federal government of Nigeria needs to show leadership on this critical and vexed issue. Number two, the way and manner. You will recall the INC, the Niger National Congress, after due consultations with the traditional rulers and elders, and over 62 youth wings of associations, militant associations, came up with the burning desire that no, there is the need to have a ceasefire, a unilateral ceasefire, so that reason can have its place in this whole mess. But unfortunately, after the call for unilateral ceasefire, the president did well by accepting the ceasefire and just declared 2 weeks. And the 2 weeks he declared was in the air, and he was off to London for medical treatment. The Avengers, on their part, and other militant associations or unions were like, okay, what's happening? But we were left in the dark.
Who are we?
That is the Niger National Congress, the Pan-Socio-Cultural Association that initiated and called, or rather sued for the peace, was left in the dark. And under such circumstances, tomorrow, the next day we saw Kachiku was at Oporoza. The next day, Amechi was visiting. The other day, you see General Boro visiting, some other aides. So there is real confusion in the handling of this crisis. For God's sake, for love of country, Nigeria, we need to do the needful. And the needful is to define a structured dialogue process, if dialogue has been accepted as a policy by Mr. President.
Okay, so you do admit that shortly after Mr. President's call for a truce, there were visits by the various ministers that you mentioned to the Niger Delta. Wasn't that to show that, you know, there are some considerations being made, perhaps they're yet to materialize now, but there are some considerations being made to ensure that the agitations of the militants are eventually listened to?
Well, I don't know how you got to that conclusion. If the process is an open-ended one and we are not under there is no threat to national security, lives and properties in the area, well, that legalized, that kind of solve itself approach would have worked well. But unfortunately, that's not where we are. Where we are is there. We've lived as a people, we have lived with these fallouts, howsoever described, both from the federal forces, from the militants. We have lived with it, and our people are dying.
You know what I'm getting here? Sorry, Mokpe. You saying 2 weeks of ceasefire from the government, there was nothing done between the group, the government, and even your association?
From the viewpoint of the Niger National Congress, nothing was done. We were only invited to the flag off of the Ogoni clean-up. And we said, when a current military operation was going on against our people, children and women, vulnerable people in society, who could not even afford 3 square meals, that wasn't the best of time to invite the Niger National Congress for a meeting. And we boycotted it. But after then, there hasn't been any further contact. Now, the federal government needs to be asked, whom were you talking with? I think the whole, we are not new to this crisis. Some of us were born into this crisis. And we are products of the contradictions of this crisis in every facet of it. So the point I'm making here is the federal government, Mr. President, may have good intentions. But somewhere down the line, I think there is a mix-up.
In other words, there was an invitation the first time extended to INC.
INC's invitation was to attend the government's effort at clean up of Ogoni, not to resolve the current resurgence of violence. I need to make this very clear, please.
Does that then mean that you'll say, well, in the circumstance, given your submission, you're justifying the attacks on the pipelines?
That's no justification. You see, look, the point I'm making is this. The president did well, first by embracing dialogue. He needs to be commended for that. Perhaps he may, I don't like guessing, but if there is supposed to be a meeting to resolve this current resurgence, I think fair is fair. The Bayelsa state government had a committee that looked into the immediate and remote causes of this resurgence of violence. That committee report has been submitted. Delta State did the same, and in fact, the one in Delta State was headed by the Deputy Governor, Deacon Kingsley, His Excellency Deacon Kingsley Otuaro, who is even from the Baramatu clan. That report is lying somewhere in the presidency. And if you want to you want to follow up on the recommendations of such, you need to formally say, look, at so time, so place. Yes, these are the people we're inviting for this meeting, and the ultimate aim is to resolve this destruction of national critical economic assets. But I'm suggesting very clear, in lucid terms, that no invitation was extended to us. And then let me go straight away to even say that, look, you must understand the problem before you can even prefer solutions.
Okay, so can we ask then, because you've talked about issues that need to be resolved, you've talked about agitations. What exactly are the agitations?
Well, please, I want us to be very clear. Agitation is different from the demands made by various agitators. In Nigerian media, there's a lot of mix-up. Let's make it very clear, please. Make that distinction. And for the agitations, you need to go historical, legal, socio-economic perspectives. You need to look at those ones. Remember what some people call the Niger Delta. Perhaps may not, there are definitional issues. So a good starting point could be the definition of what I read from the papers and the internet. Remember that in 1956, at the Ibadan Constitutional Conference, the Ijaw people took a position which was read out by late Harold Dapabre. And that position was that they signed cession treaties with Her Britannic Majesty, Great Britain. And those treaties were for protection and extension of telephone services and education generally. And that if the country was to be independent, they were willing to be on their own. 1957 at Lancaster.
I'm sorry, sir. We don't have all the time to go into history, but we would appreciate it if you could just, tell us in very clear terms. Are you saying that the Niger Delta is asking for secession? Is that what you're asking?
Secession is not the right word, but requesting for political space of self-determination to be able to put up plans for its development and improvement.
Isn't that going on right now?
That is not.
What is stopping them?
What does political space, the
political and economic space will require, if you want me to suggest what ought to be done, I will tell you, there is the urgent need to restructure the Nigerian Federation.
You know, I think you're coming home now. But the problem has always been almost what you also highlighted by saying you asked a question. It sounds rhetorical, but I think it's a question that needs an answer. You asked who are they that are having these dialogue with the federal government. You just wanted to know, but we have just come to realize that over time, every time we bring people, different youth group or association from the Niger Delta to talk about this matter, they're never on the same page. So are you thinking that the government is in talks with another group other than INC or the IYC that you don't know of?
Please, the Ijaw National Congress is the socio-cultural, pan-socio-cultural association of the Ijaws. IYC is an amalgam of the then 48 youth wings, and is part of the youth movement, the youth body of the INC.
So the INC is more or less the mother. So
yes.
Every other one is underneath the INC.
Yes.
Does the government know this?
Well, of course. And well, let me just assist. As far back as December 22nd, to be very precise, the Ijaw National Congress, from its reports, we know we have 78 autonomous indigenous Ijaw clans in 6 states. From the reports we're getting, there was obviously threats, and we felt, no, let us handle it. And what we did then, I'm coming,
okay.
What we did was...
Just hang on a minute. We'll need to take a quick break, but we'll be back so you can then tell us about that in a moment. Join us again.